There I am. All right. Good morning, everybody. So we're in the middle of the lesson 2 of the Heavens Declare that talks about the Big Bang. We're already up to chapter 8. We'll see if we can get through the whole thing. Well, I don't think we'll get through the whole thing today, but we have 2 sessions after this. So we will definitely finish up this particular lesson and get into lesson 3 before we take a break for the summer. I've noticed in some of these answers in Genesis materials that they probably could have hired a proofreader on some of these. There are an awful lot of typos that you wouldn't expect from a professional publication. So the heading here, the Matter and Antimatter Challenge. That's antimatter. We're not talking about a new superhero Antimatter or something. So we'll start with chapter 8, the chapter 8 video.
All around the universe we find matter, but it seems to be absent of antimatter. All observable laws of nature and scientific experiments tell us there should be an equal amount of antimatter, but it's just not there. This is a huge challenge to the Big Bang Theory.
When you hear about antimatter, you're thinking Star Trek and sci-fi and stuff, but actually science fiction is basically telling a story using some scientific terms, maybe in novel ways, making up a few things. But the antimatter they're not making up.
It looks like the universe is made up of ordinary matter. Antimatter is stuff that happens in particle accelerators. When you slam one piece of ordinary matter against another, out come pieces of antimatter.
Antimatter is just like matter, except the charges of the particles are reversed. You have a negatively charged antiproton and a positively charged, they call it a positron, like an electron. Just the same as matter, but the charges are reversed. Every time we turn energy into matter, we get an exactly equal amount of antimatter. It appears to be a law of nature.
The universe itself consists of particles, or normal matter, it seems. If we had a significant amount of antimatter in the universe, where the antimatter region and a matter region would intersect, you would end up with this huge annihilation, and we don't see that taking place, so it appears the universe is dominated by matter.
The fact that we have matter only in our universe lends itself to a creation interpretation. My secular colleagues, most of them believe in a Big Bang. The universe explodes into existence from nothing, and then there's this energy. Initially, the universe is allegedly very hot, and you have pure energy, and then some of that forms matter later as it cools. Well, we can do that in a laboratory. We can take high energy and turn it into matter. Every time we do that, however, we'll get an equal amount of antimatter. If the universe was all originally energy, and now a lot of it's turned to matter, where's the antimatter? You should have an equal amount of antimatter.
They can't imagine a process which would create only ordinary matter.
They've suggested early on that the total matter and antimatter were pretty much equal, except there was a slight imbalance, a slight asymmetry, and in favor of matter. And so most of the matter and antimatter annihilated each other, producing a lot of energy, and what's left is what's left. They congratulate themselves by saying, well, we've solved that problem, but they really haven't. All they've done is fudged it by making the inequity between the two less, but there's still an inequity, and symmetry means absolute symmetry, no inequity. It's an equation there, and that's a problem, and that's a problem that's just been defined away, but never really clarified or actually solved.
Okay, matter and antimatter. Number 1, is antimatter real? Yes, every time that scientists split atoms and thus kind of destroy matter, create energy from matter, antimatter is created too. And antimatter is a substance that is just negatively charged rather than positively charged. I guess that's number 2 then. What is the best way to describe antimatter?
Positively charged matter, basically?
Negatively charged.
Oh, negatively
Yes.
charged matter.
Yes. So you have
A positron instead of...
yeah. Where we live, where the world, the universe as we know it, is positronic. This would be antitronic or neutronic. Well, no, not neutronic, antitronic. True or false? More matter can be created than antimatter. That's false. The equation is there is an equal amount created when you destroy matter or where you turn matter into energy, that the energy creates both matter and antimatter. Number 4, true or false? When matter and antimatter intersect, they annihilate one another. Yeah, the video didn't really touch on that, nor does the notes. I don't think that I don't know that we've seen antimatter and matter annihilate each other, but maybe for the purposes of our discussion, we should say yes, that's what happens, because that's then number 5. Then how does the lack of antimatter in the universe seem to be evidence against the Big Bang? There should be equal amounts of antimatter and matter. Number 6, explain the rescuing device that is used to solve the antimatter problem.
They said that the total amount of matter and antimatter were slightly different.
Yeah, there was an imbalance, and the imbalance favored the matter. So then you've got the matter and the antimatter that were created canceling each other out, and thus there's only matter in the universe that we see. Number 7, how does this rescuing device fall short?
You just answered it. We just see matter in the universe. I mean, we don't see any evidence of the canceling out or anything.
Well, if it's been canceled out, I guess we wouldn't see evidence of it. But as far as we know, and this goes back a few weeks ago to we were talking about, there's an assumption that we have that laws of physics that we see in force here on Earth are out there in the same force out in the far reaches of the universe. We don't know that that's true necessarily, but we're going to assume that. This is sort of an interesting take on things. You can combat the theory of evolution, Big Bang, and all this stuff. You can combat this with the Word of God. Yes. To someone who has completely rejected the Word of God as authority, you can come at them with their own game and use their own terms and say, according to your rules, what you believe doesn't work. And the principle that they have here on Earth is that when you destroy matter and create energy with matter, particles of matter and particles of antimatter are created in synchronicity in equal parts. That's always the same. So you can't come along then and say, well, somewhere out there in the far reaches of the universe, there was an imbalance, because that violates the principle that you're working with here on Earth. There need to be equal parts antimatter and matter. And if you force people to play by their own rules and their own rules trip them up, then there's a problem with their rules, probably. So, well, probably not, but we speak the truth in love. Remember, is always the apostles' advice too. So, all right. So, moving on then to chapter 9.
As the Big Bang settled down and pure energy turned into matter, supposedly the matter eventually formed the galaxies. Yet, there are some big problems with this idea.
How do galaxies form in a Big Bang? Not very well. There's been a lot of talk about this throughout my entire lifetime, and it's still a bit of mystery.
They don't really have good theories about that, is my assessment.
In the Big Bang model, you have the early universe was radiation, and then from that you got hydrogen gas and some other elements as well. Eventually, this new matter started to collect and clump up.
They collapse in and they start rotating and so on. And then stars fragment and form. And there's some debate about whether the stars form first or the galaxy forms first.
They told us that it was top down, that galaxies formed first and then stars formed once the galaxies got underway. There's also been a bottom-up philosophy, which now seems to be gaining, maybe even the ascendancy now, where they think stars formed first and then they formed into galaxies. So the question of where do galaxies, how do they form? Well, the answer is really, we don't know.
Nobody's ever seen that happen. The gas pressure is always greater than gravity in all situations where we've observed it. Every single one. We've never seen a star form. But it's alleged that they do. And then some of them form the heavier elements in their core by nuclear fusion. And then when some of those stars explode, not all stars do, but some of them do, the idea is they seed the universe then with these heavier elements. And so that's why all stars contain trace amounts of these heavier elements. And then some of those heavier elements condense and form planets around a star. And so you tend to have the rocky planets close by the star and then the big gas giants further away. But then again, we've recently found that you find gas giants very close to their star. So it's actually a problem for the secular view.
Okay, the formation of galaxies. Number one, what things supposedly comprised the early universe? Specifically, which gas? Hydrogen mainly, and then lighter elements and the radiation. We talked about the microwave energy last week. Number two, according to Big Bang theorists, which formed first, stars or galaxies? One or the other, who knows? We don't know. And of course, one of the problems of that is the next question. Number three, have we ever directly seen a star form? Oh. Number four, according to their theory, how do planets form? Yeah, you've got the gravitational pull of the star. So you've got the rocks and dirt and stuff that's floating around there compressing closer to the star to form the rocky planets closer to the star, and then the gas that isn't nearly as susceptible to gravity as the solid matter being pulled together farther away from the star to make the gas giants. That is sort of the model of our solar system for the most part. The gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn are much farther out than Mars, Venus, and Earth, Mercury. But it doesn't hold true with other star systems. We see gas giants close to the stars, and so it's just all conjecture. You understand how frustrating it must be to be an astrophysicist and have every godless theory that you put out there end up having such flaws in there, you've got to come up with another godless theory to explain why your first godless theory wasn't quite right. And how easy we have it as Christians, in a sense. Not that there isn't an awful lot of work to do in science, worthwhile work to do, and a lot of observation that can be made, but how easy it is for us to simply say, well, God said he made it. And we don't have to try to explain exactly how he made it, because he said he made it with the power of his word. It's just, like Jesse had said, they get mad at us. Boy, I guess probably they do, because we have it so easy as people who believe in creation, relatively speaking. All right, up to chapter 10 in rotating galaxies.
As you look upon a spiral galaxy, the views are incredible. Yet the rotation of a galaxy also presents challenges to the idea of the Big Bang.
Galaxies actually rotate differentially, which means the inner portions rotate quick and the outer portions rotate slow. And so if you think about it, it's constantly twisting itself up. That spiral structure is becoming tighter and tighter every time it rotates. And it can't do that forever. It's been estimated that a galaxy could rotate for a maximum of about let's say less than 1 billion years before it's completely twisted beyond recognition. And 1 billion years may sound like a lot, and it is. But my secular colleagues believe that galaxies, spiral galaxies, are 10 billion years old on average. But they can't be. That spiral structure would be gone long before then. Now, there's always a rescuing device. And my secular colleagues have said, well, there's an answer for this. And the answer is new spiral arms form as the old ones are twisted beyond recognition. They call it a spiral density wave hypothesis. The idea is you get star formation in sort of spurts. Of course, again, we've never seen star formation anyway. So they're invoking one problem to explain another. The density wave hypothesis itself has problems as well, such as what would cause it, and it made predictions that you should not see spiral structure very close to the core of a galaxy, but we do. The Whirlpool galaxy has spiral structure right into the core. It goes against the density wave hypothesis. It's best to just say, well, you know what? God made the galaxies with spiral structure, and they've rotated just a little bit in 6,000 years. Not a problem for creation, big problem for the secular view.
Okay, pretty straightforward there. Number one, why would spiral galaxies no longer have distinct arms after 1 billion years? It's just too much time for them to be spinning around and have those arms way out there, far away from the gravitational center of the galaxy. Eventually, they would just disintegrate as arms and float out into space. How old do most secular scientists believe some of these galaxies are? 10 billion years. And mathematically speaking, these galaxies shouldn't be able to spin more than 1 billion years. Number 3, what is the name of the rescuing device they use to try to resolve this problem? The spiral density wave hypothesis. So these arms are being refreshed by the creation of new stars, which we've never seen, of course, too. So as the video said, too, you're taking one problem from another aspect of macroevolution and just importing that problem to try to solve this problem. Well, we've never seen stars form like that. Well, that must be what happens, though. Even though we've never seen it happen, that must be what's happening here to solve the problem that would make the galaxies impossible to be where they are and doing what they're doing right now, if they're as old as we think they are. Number 4, how do spiraling galaxies fit with the creation account?
That's not a problem because we're saying it's only 6,000 years old.
There's absolutely no problem with time. And the amount of time that would take for a galaxy to disintegrate if you believe in a young Earth creation model. And remember, the Earth, if we're talking about young Earth, that means the universe is even younger, because the Earth was created on day 1, sun, moon, and stars, and thus galaxies, not created till day 4. So everything has been put in place by God the way He wanted it to be put in place. And it just isn't a problem for us then. So.
I like the little quote in here that combats the spiral density wave hypothesis that they have, that it says, but even if stars do form, this rescuing device makes predictions that there would never be a spiral structure close to the core of a galaxy. However, we actually see it in a Whirlpool galaxy.
Yep. I can't tell you where the Whirlpool galaxy is out there in the sky, so.
Take the galaxy and say, see, it's right there. It disproves them right away.
Okay, now we get to a larger thought here, grasping to save the Big Bang Theory with chapter 11.
The laws of astrophysics are a great help to scientists in understanding how the universe works Yet the more they study the universe, the more challenges arise in their worldview of billions of years. To save the idea of the Big Bang, they seem to get even more creative in their predictions.
There's a lot of other ways in which the universe appears to be very, very fine-tuned for us to be here. Even among the secular people, there's cosmologists wrestling and arguing about this. Why does the universe appear so finely tuned? Well, you can say that's because a creator did it, but of course, being secular, by definition, they don't like that option. So instead they invoke the multiverse.
The universe is just one of an infinitude of universes. And that the fact that we're here and can ask and contemplate such questions is because we happen to live in a universe where life is possible.
This idea that there's all these countless universes. Some would put a number on it and say it's 10 to the 500 universes. That's a 1 with 500 zeros after it. That's the number of universes out there. And we just happen to live in the one that has all these wonderful characteristics that would otherwise appear designed, but it's not really designed because there's just so many to choose from.
The vast majority of them don't have any living organisms because the physics isn't right, gravity isn't right, or light isn't right, or whatever. Things are different in each one of them. And so there's kind of a filtering process going on only in our universe.
And we wouldn't accept that kind of explanation in other areas of life. I think it was philosopher John Lennox who I heard first point this out. If a criminal standing in front of a judge and saying, well, you know, Your Honor, I know that my footprints were found at the scene of the burglary, and I know my fingerprints were found on the windowsill where the glass was broken, and I know that there was the item that was stolen was found in my possession, but you know, we just happen to live in a universe where all those unlikely things all happen to line up even though I didn't really do it. Why do we accept that just because a scientist says it?
This is hardly a scientific concept. It is a philosophical and theological concept. I would sure hate to go into eternity basing everything upon that sort of idea. As new challenges come along, new problems come along, they just simply add an additional thing to solve that one and solve that one. So you throw in new effects and you tweak the model and it becomes a new parameter you can alter at will. It seems to me this model can't be stumped. No matter what happens, no new observations, new problems arise. You simply solve it by throwing in a new field, a new effect, something you hadn't thought of before, and it fixes the problem. And you go on there, it solves the problem. They think, well, this is a very robust theory then. Well, what you're doing is you're constraining it to fit what you need to, but you didn't predict any of these. You're after the fact, you're coming up with it. If you can account for any new observation, any new problem with these kind of endless rules of modification of your model, then you can never disprove it. Sir Karl Popper talked about a model, a theory in science must be disprovable at some point, but if you can continue to tweak it and change it, it cannot be disproved. A model or a theory that explains anything and everything really explains nothing. And this is not science. You need to be able to disprove it at some point.
Okay, number one, what is the biggest challenge to the naturalistic origin of the universe, that it just came to be eventually as we see it?
Changes in their philosophy and their belief.
Well, before we get to the changes, just what challenge do they have in thinking there wasn't a creator when they look at the universe?
That the universe has been perfectly designed for life.
Yeah, it's you have to you have to make a really big assumption that there's no creator when there's so much evidence for a creator. Nobody drives past a building and says, isn't it amazing how all those steel beams just came together and the roof tiles just came together? I mean, what are the odds that something like that would happen? But that's what they say when it comes to the human body, to plant life, to the universe. Isn't it amazing that it just all came together like this? You just look at the design of your body, your eyes, your cells, the division that goes on inside of your cells. It's so obviously a design process that brought this into being and sustains it, that it's almost ludicrous to think that it just happened that way, and yet that's what scientists do. So, number two, how have scientists gotten around the fact that this universe looks as if it were designed? Said, have you ever heard the Shakespeare monkey theory? Okay, if you left, and this is actually very apropos to this too, the theory is, if you left 10 monkeys in a room with a typewriter and paper, eventually, given it might take billions and billions of years, eventually those monkeys will produce the works of William Shakespeare. They'll just randomly hit the right keys on the typewriter at the right time, and you'll have Othello and Romeo and Juliet written by 10 monkeys. That is exactly what they're saying concerning the universe. You know, and you have the multiverse theory, which of course no one's ever seen another universe. But there must be cajillions of universes out there besides ours, and we are just lucky enough to be in the one that was good enough, had the right gravitational pull and amount of light and heat to sustain life. Isn't that amazing? Well, yeah. So number three, how does the Big Bang Theory fail as a valid scientific theory?
Philosophical one.
Well, yeah, it isn't scientific in the sense that it can't be observed, it can't be reproduced, and it can't be proven or disproven. Because if you come along with the evidence against the Big Bang, they'll just tweak the Big Bang Theory. That's not science. Well, what is it then if it's not science?
Science fiction?
Well, in a sense, it's religion. Everyone has faith in something. You can either have faith in the God who actually made everything and then provided for the salvation of his fallen creatures through his son Jesus, or you can believe in the unbelievably unlikely circumstances that came to just produce life out of nothing the way we know it. And if the multiverses are comprised of a number that equals, 10 to the 500th power, one with 500 zeros after it, you'd have to multiply that by a factor of who knows how many to get the chances that life would ever develop here on Earth in the first place. That's really bad odds. It makes playing the Powerball look like a sure thing. Really. I mean, the odds of winning the Powerball, one in 500 million, that's nothing compared to what we're talking about here. And you want to gamble your eternal future on that unlikelihood? That's far more foolish than planning your retirement around winning the Powerball.
Could possibly happen, given enough time, it did happen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, which, again, that's not science. That's religion. And there's actually a great, there was a court case. Atheism actually is a religion. You do have to have quite a bit of faith in order to believe that there is no God. It's faith in nothing that's going to do you any good, but it is a religion. It can't be proven or disproven scientifically. So, Helga.
I was just thinking, it's written in Scripture. See, the fool says there is no God. And in my mind, as we're going through this, and I'm being silly, but I can see these scientists, no, there is no God, rolling along the floor saying, no, there is no God. Just just rejecting, because we gotta find another way because we're gonna reject this, and this, what this reminds me of.
It is. And you go to the book of Revelation, when the unbelievers are cast into the lake of fire, they aren't cast into the lake of fire in a repentant state like, I'm so sorry, I forsook God. They are angry. They are gnashing their teeth against God all the way. They hate him.
This kind of reminds me of what one of my coworkers at METC said. We have a system where they have to sign in to use the Academic Support Center, and they'll argue and argue and argue that they're just walking through when it'll only take like 5 seconds to sign in. It sounds like all they want to do is argue that there's no God, but they're just proving, they're wasting their time.
Well, in the end, they certainly are. Everyone only has a finite amount of time here on earth to find God, and they're wasting their time trying to argue against God. All right, so we've got 2 more chapters which we'll be able to, I guess we will get to today, but we'll take our break now. Thanks to Dave for bringing in the treats, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay, 2 more chapters to go in this particular lesson. We'll look at chapter 12.
The Big Bang continues to morph and change. Why? Because new observations and physical laws contradict the theory. So they need to come up with new ideas to support it. The reliability of the Big Bang is on shaky ground. Even the eventual outcome of the universe is hotly debated among secular cosmologists.
The future of the universe in the Big Bang model is bleak. There used to be talk about different possibilities, that the universe would expand indefinitely forever and ever and get cooler and cooler, and we have what's called a heat death. Everything gets colder, stars burn out, the Earth cools off, and everything's cold and dead at the end of everything.
It's infinitely large, and it will just get infinitely larger and spread out until everything is very cold and dark.
There's no heat left in the sense there's no energy exchange anymore because everything's frozen. Energy will become useless and so on. It's a rather bleak outlook on the future.
Now, it'll take a long time to arrive there, but that is the ultimate fate. There will no longer be stars burning, no sun anywhere. Planets will be freezing. Everything in space, star, planet, just going to be a cold cinder, if I can use that word. That's the fate of everything, and there's no way to avoid that. There's no other universe to escape to escape this fate. I mean, this is where everything's going to wind up. And you can't say, well, just colonize another planet, because those are going to die too. So in a sense, what difference does it make? As the Bible says, if Christianity is not true, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And he's quoting a pagan philosopher there. I mean, that's the ultimate meaning, is that there is no meaning. There's no purpose.
And I find that very interesting because a lot of Christians compromise with the Big Bang when it talks about the past. They say, well, maybe that's the method that God created. But then when it comes to the future, they say, oh, no, I don't believe that. There's going to be a restoration, a new heavens and a new earth, and so on.
Well, people believe in the Big Bang, believe in the Bible. It's interesting, many of them are quite orthodox on the end of the world. They realize from 2 Peter and elsewhere that there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. And they believe that will be rapid, it will be instantaneous almost. It will be a very fast event. And I pointed out to one of my friends on this, a fellow astronomer, I said, well, you believe the universe is going to have a rapid end, a very drastic, catastrophic end, but you don't believe it had a catastrophic, rapid beginning. I said, I think it's like bookends. The universe is going to end in some similar way to the way the universe began, but you want to drag it out for billions of years and bring it to some great conclusion. I don't see that at all. I think there's a nice symmetry in the universe showing up.
Okay, the end of the universe. What is the name of the idea, number one, about when the universe will run out of usable energy? Heat death. That doesn't sound fun. The death of all heat. Number two, if there's nothing but natural forces, what will most likely be the end of the universe? Well, this presupposes there's no supernatural anything at all. But if there's just nature out there, then what's... Yeah, cold and dark. There's no more light being produced by any stars. There's no heat being produced. Remember, we actually did talk about the temperature of the universe last week. 3 degrees Kelvin, which is very, very cold, but is still a register of some heat out there in the universe. Now we're talking 0 degrees Kelvin, absolute zero, nothing. Number 3, if we believe that God can recreate the heavens and the earth in a short amount of time at the end of history, what does that tell us about the beginning? Or what should it tell us, I suppose we should say?
That he created it.
Yeah, so... If it's going to be a very instantaneous, what does 1 Corinthians say? In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. The trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised, and we will be changed. If God can do that in a moment, at the twinkling of an eye, recreate a perfect heaven and a perfect earth, a perfect sky, perfect earth, well, why is there any reason to think he didn't do that at the beginning? Let there be light. let the sun, moon, stars exist, and so on. All right, then we'll close out today by watching chapter 13, the biblical model.
I think the biblical model works better because it's truth. I'm a presuppositionalist in the sense that I start with that kind of assumption and realize it.
I think the biblical model is better than the Big Bang. First of all, because the biblical model doesn't involve contradictions of fundamental physics. Is the creation account a miraculous account? Yes, but it admits that. Whereas the Big Bang needs miracles while denying that miracles are possible. The Big Bang has supernatural implications while denying that supernatural things can occur. So the Big Bang is inherently self-contradictory, whereas the Bible is consistent.
Really helps to know the picture on the puzzle pieces when the puzzle pieces are coming together. The biblical view provides lots of clues and information about how all the scientific data should come together.
You also see things in that some of the predictions of the Big Bang about what we would see as we looked further and further out would match the creation account, whereas it does not necessarily match the Big Bang account. For example, as we look further and further out, we're seeing galaxies at very, very far distances, assuming that we can measure distances accurately, and seeing backwards in time, in a sense, because it took light a long time to get here, according to the Big Bang interpretation. Secular cosmologists had expected to not be able to see galaxies that far away, because if we're looking back in time, so to speak, we're seeing the earlier stages of the universe. The Big Bang models, in its initial form, said you needed several billion years for stars and galaxies to form. A short amount of time for stars to form, and then several billion for galaxies to form with that. We're now seeing galaxies that are so far away that if you interpret them according to the Big Bang model, they're there and they're present just 500 or so million years after the Big Bang itself. That's half of a billion. Initial predictions were it took 6 to 7, 8 billion years to form a galaxy. We're getting back to the very Big Bang itself. Again, if you interpret the observations the way they look at things. And there's still galaxies as far as we can see. This doesn't match what they expected. When the Hubble Space Telescope first started taking pictures, and we started seeing not only the near objects, but also these stunning images of faraway galaxies, a lot of people were surprised, because a lot of people had expected that we wouldn't be able to see things that far away. Yet we are. And as our technology is getting better, we're able to look further and further back, and we're running into some real problems for how far you can stretch the Big Bang model to accommodate these things.
Okay, number one, the Big Bang contradicts laws like the conservation of energy and others when it says that nothing became everything, but the creation account says that God spoke everything out of nothing. With that in mind, how is the creation account consistent with the laws of physics and the Big Bang is not? Sort of a metaphysical question, but where did the laws of physics come from? If you believe that someone wrote down these laws first, then it only stands to reason that whatever this being made fits the laws that he had in mind. If you have everything come out of nothing, well, why should there be an order? Why should there be any laws that are obeyed? If there's only nothing and chaos, and why should order come out of chaos? That's one of the big fallacies of macroevolution, that things become more and more orderly over time. That isn't the way things work. And we know that from our personal experience too. Things don't naturally become more orderly left alone. Number two, how is the creation account consistent when it speaks of miracles and the supernatural?
Doesn't the Big Bang say that it's kind of like a miracle that these things happen, but yet they dissolve?
Yeah, the Big Bang says everything is naturalistic. It just came to be. But then it needs things to happen that are supernatural. It needs there to be the singularity before the Big Bang. It needs something to be the trigger that explodes the Big Bang. It needs something to be able to violate the rules of physics again and again, as we've seen throughout this particular lesson, when it comes to sustaining the Big Bang, or the theory of the Big Bang, I should say. The creation account, what are the first few words of the Bible? In the beginning, God. So that's our starting point. In the beginning, God. And all through it, God is exercising his divine control over all things, including the process of creation. Number 3, how is the Big Bang inconsistent?
The Big Bang has the supernatural implications. Also, and then they deny that supernatural things can occur.
That's one inconsistency, yeah, just not admitting the necessity of extra physical things to happen. Things outside of the physical world have to happen in order for the Big Bang to be true. Jesse?
Also, we're seeing galaxies form.
That's the next question.
Oh, it is? But it's also how Big Bang is
Yeah.
consistent.
That is true. Well, they do segue into each other, but...
Sorry.
But it's sort of a review of the entire lesson that we've been through. There are so many inconsistencies in the Big Bang. And we had that term that comes up again and again, the rescuing device. The Big Bang needs an awful lot of rescuing devices. It's like, well, that shouldn't happen. That's not what we're expecting to see. We need a rescuing device. And the rescuing device isn't something that we've observed or seen. The rescuing device is something that we as human beings have imagined. It's just come up from our own heads, and thus the Big Bang is much more religion than science. Number 4, how does the fact that we see galaxies as far out as we can see fit with the creation account? Whereas the Big Bang says, well, it must take billions of years for these spiral galaxies to form. As far as we can see out, we see spiral galaxies, and when we are looking out, we are, in a sense, looking back in time, because it takes light a long time to get here. So as far as we can see, there are spiral galaxies, which is not what we were expecting to see.
But God said, let there be,
Yeah.
and there was.
So yeah, God just put them there the way he wanted them to be there. And number 5, how does the fact that we see galaxies as far out as we can see cause a problem for the Big Bang? Yeah, they shouldn't be there. We should be able, when the Hubble telescope went up, there was a presupposition. Now we're going to look back and see the formation of stars. Now we're going to see the formation of galaxies. We're going to see the stuff that we know happened to create this universe, because God didn't put it. There's no God, and he didn't put it here. But instead we see fully formed stars and galaxies.
Their problem is that it should have taken like 500 million years for them to form.
It should have, but yeah, it doesn't fit their timetable. Now, in a later lesson, we're going to talk about the speed of light and light years and such. And wait a second, doesn't that disprove a young Earth? If we're able to look back and see things that are millions of light years away, doesn't that mean we needed millions of years for that light to get here? But we'll cover that, some of that a little bit later. So.
I wonder how they just, I mean, there's flaws in it, and there's proven to be flaws in that theory.
They want to refuse the God.
Well, yeah, it goes back to what a seminary professor of mine once said. Never be surprised at what other people believe, as long as they don't have to believe the truth. Because there are implications in having to believe the truth. You have to believe that you're sinful, that you owe a creator obedience, and that you know you haven't given that being obedience, and there must be consequences. People will explain anything away in order to avoid that truth. That's what it boils down to.
Doesn't our conscience kind of pighead that we are sinful.
You
because
have to, the conscience, yeah, you do have to,
what's right and wrong.
you have to dull the conscience in order to ignore God, but the conscience does scream out. Romans chapter 1 talks about the conscience calling out and how people are without excuse. They have a remnant of the law of God written on their hearts. And every human society has some of the basic laws concerning property rights and concerning murder and concerning marriage even. Where did these come from? It's not just different groups of humans developed similar ideas over the years. They all had a basic semblance of God's law written in their hearts as the conscience. Yeah.
Wasn't one of the examples of God that the 7-day week, that he's responsible for that? I think in one of the lessons it said, well, that's one thing that God did was set up a 7-day week.
Well, he did, but we can order our week however we want, I suppose. But yeah, there is symmetry in the universe. There's symmetry in the years that we have here on Earth and the rotation of the Earth around the sun. I'm sorry, the revolution of the Earth around the sun. The rotation of the Earth in reference to the sun and the moon. There is so much symmetry that it's amazing that you'd ever call it an accident. All right, let's close with a short prayer. Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to look into some of the work that's been done to observe your creation and to understand how exactly you placed everything in the universe the way you did. Help us also to realize that as wonderful as observational science can be, it's truly only your word that is absolute truth and gives us what we need as far as the information concerning you, the origin of the universe, our souls, and our eternal home in heaven that your Son Jesus won for us. Help us to rely more and more on your word as we see how your word is confirmed by true science. Lord, in your mercy,